It started with a bark that made the entire playground stop. Not the excited bark of a dog chasing a ball. Not the friendly yip you'd expect from a school demonstration. This bark cut the air like a siren. Sharp, direct, unrelenting. Officer. Terry barely had time to turn before Valor, his K9 partner, broke free from his side and bolted. He didn't lunge at a stranger. He didn't charge the gate. He went for a little girl, more specifically, her backpack. Kids screamed. Teachers yelled. The sound of plastic and canvas tearing echoed across the pavement as Valor's powerful jaws ripped into the bright pink unicorn backpack slung over the shoulders of a second grader named Lily Parrish. Lily froze. Her wide eyes were filled not with fear of the dog but something deeper. Terror. In one violent motion, the backpack's contents spilled across the ground. A juice box, a crushed cracker pack, a worn plush rabbit, and then a small envelope. Stained, with something brownish red, Lily's teacher, Ms. Holbrook, bent down slowly to pick it up. Her hands trembled. The envelope was half torn, its paper brittle, edges frayed like it had been hidden for too long. Inside it was a crumpled piece of notebook paper. Ms. Holbrook unfolded it, eyes narrowing, lips parting. Then she turned pale and collapsed to her knees, right there on the blacktop. Earlier that morning, the students at Westbrook Elementary had been buzzing with excitement. The police department's K9 unit was visiting, part of an annual safety and service week. They'd met the handlers, learned how dogs like Valor sniffed out narcotics and tracked missing people. Officer Terry even let the kids take turns giving basic commands: sit, stay, paw. Everyone had loved it, especially Lily. She was always quiet, smart, gentle. The kind of kid who didn't raise her hand much but always had perfect spelling tests. She had one friend, a stuffed rabbit named Clover. She carried him everywhere, even to recess. No one ever expected her to be the reason the sirens showed up. Ms. Holbrook sat inside the nurse's office now, pale and shaken, a damp towel pressed to her forehead. Officer Terry stood nearby, the torn note still in a plastic evidence bag. He had read it once and that was enough. He said if I told anyone, he'd make Mommy disappear too. I hid the picture in my backpack. I think he knows. Please help me. If you find this, I couldn't say it out loud. There was no name on the note but the handwriting. It was Lily's. Outside, Lily sat on a bench, her small hands wrapped tightly around Clover's floppy ears. She wasn't crying. She hadn't said a word since Valor tore her bag open. Officer Terry approached slowly, kneeling down beside her. "Hey," he said gently. "You know my partner Valor, right?" She looked at the dog beside him, now calm, seated, watching her with alert eyes. "He's really sorry about your backpack," Terry added with a faint smile. Lily didn't respond. But she blinked, slowly. Then she whispered, barely audible, "He knew." If you believe in stories where dogs don't just protect us, they uncover truth, we invite you to subscribe to Heroes for Animals. These aren't just stories. They're real moments where four-legged heroes speak louder than words. Valor didn't just bark at random. He had picked up something. Blood? A scent? Stress pheromones? Terry had seen it before. Dogs like Valor could detect trauma like radar picked up heat, but for a second grader's backpack to set him off, that wasn't normal. And that note? That wasn't accidental. Someone had put it there to be found. Within the hour, Lily's mother was contacted. She arrived at the school out of breath in a worn sweatshirt and faded jeans. She looked more exhausted than surprised. "She didn't bite anyone, did she?" the woman asked, glancing sideways at her daughter. Officer Terry's eyes narrowed. "Ma'am, it was your daughter's backpack that got torn, not the other way around." "Oh. Right." The mother forced a smile. "She's dramatic sometimes." Behind her, Lily's expression didn't change. She kept her eyes on Valor. Her fingers still gripped Clover like he was the only solid thing in her world. Terry walked the woman out to talk privately. Inside, the school counselor sat down beside Lily. "Sweetheart," she asked, "is there something you're scared of?" Lily looked at her, then reached into her pocket. She pulled out a folded piece of paper. It was a crayon drawing. A house. A girl. A tall man with red scribbles where his face should be. And under the drawing, in childlike print, he said to smile or else. The counselor gently took the paper. "Who is that, Lily?" But Lily was looking at Valor now. Only Valor. And in that moment, the dog let out a low, warning growl, his ears pointing toward the door, because something wasn't right. And the one who couldn't say it had already told him everything. Lily Parrish sat in the back of the police cruiser, her knees pulled to her chest, hugging Clover tight. Her seatbelt pressed against her side, but she didn't complain. She didn't speak, at all. The school counselor had gently helped her into the car, whispering comforting words Lily didn't seem to hear. Valor sat beside her in the back seat, not on the floor where he usually stayed, but right on the bench. Officer Terry had never seen him do that before. The big German shepherd leaned against Lily's side, not moving, not barking, just there, watching her, protecting her. Terry glanced at them through the rearview mirror. His gut tightened. He had seen traumatized kids before, but this was different. No tantrums, no tears. Just a girl curled around silence, and a dog who had heard every word she couldn't say. The note from Lily's backpack had already been turned in. The handwriting analyst from the department confirmed it matched other schoolwork. There was no doubt. But the bigger question remained. What had Valor smelled that triggered him? What had been in that backpack before the envelope? What was still clinging to the fibers of her belongings? Whatever it was enough to make one of the most seasoned canines in the county break from protocol. That didn't just happen. Not without a reason. Terry tightened his grip on the steering wheel. He'd driven this route 100 times, but this one felt heavier, more dangerous. Not because of violence, but because of the quiet that followed it. Back at the station, Child Protective Services was waiting. Lily was escorted to a private room, small and comfortable, with beanbags, plush toys, and soft lighting. A woman named Denise, with gentle eyes and a voice that sounded like wind through tall grass, introduced herself as Lily's caseworker. Lily didn't respond. Denise didn't push. She just handed Lily a coloring sheet and sat nearby, letting the crayons do the talking for now. In the adjacent observation room, Terry stood with Captain Fields and a forensic psychologist named Dr. Sharon Levitt. Behind the glass, they watched Lily as she slowly picked up a blue crayon and began to color the sky on a cartoon landscape. "She's showing signs of complex trauma," Dr. Levitt said quietly. "And suppression. She's not shutting down because she's stubborn. She's doing it to survive." Terry folded his arms. "Any chance she just made up the note?" Dr. Levitt shook her head. "The vocabulary fits a child her age, but the patterns, the choice of words, he said if I told anyone, he'd make Mommy disappear too. That's not something a second grader invents out of nowhere. That's learned fear." "And what about the drawing?" Captain Fields asked. Levitt tapped the report on the clipboard she held. The red scribbles over the man's face, the smile under the words "or else." It's classic masking behavior. A child trying to obey a command through art. She's saying, "Look, I'm smiling," while the red shows distress, aggression. That man terrifies her. Terry nodded once. "We need to talk to the mother again." Fields sighed. "She's dodging our calls. Says she's working nights. We'll bring her in formally." Terry's jaw tightened. No more waiting. That evening, Terry and another officer knocked on the front door of a weathered single-story house near the edge of town. The porch light flickered. A cracked flower pot lay sideways on the step. Lily's mother, Rachel Parrish, opened the door, slowly. Her eyes looked tired, but her voice was oddly chipper. "Officers, is Lily okay?" "She's safe," Terry said. "But we have some questions." Rachel hesitated. "Of course, can we not do this on the porch?" Inside, the house smelled faintly of bleach and something else. Something metallic. The living room was clean but sterile. No toys, no family photos. Just a couch, a TV, and blinds pulled too tightly shut. Terry scanned the room, noticing subtle details. One of the couch cushions was flipped. The carpet near the baseboard had a strange dark patch. "We found a note in Lily's backpack," Terry began. "It describes threats from a male figure, someone who told her to stay silent." Rachel crossed her arms. She's always been dramatic. "You don't seem surprised," Terry said. Rachel forced a smile. "Lily has an imagination. She gets it from her father." "Where is her father now?" Rachel's smile faded. "Gone. Years ago." "And has there been anyone else in the home recently? A boyfriend? Relative?" She hesitated again. "No one." Behind her something creaked, a floorboard, not loud, but enough to turn Terry's attention. "Is someone else here?" Rachel's face went cold. "No," she said too quickly. Terry stepped forward. "We'll need to check the premises. You don't have a warrant, then we'll get one. But you should know. If there's someone in this house who's hurting that girl, the dog already knows." That's when the back door slammed. Terry and his partner were through the kitchen in seconds. A man ran across the backyard, disappearing into the tree line. Rachel screamed behind them, but Terry didn't stop. The man was tall, fast, and stupid enough to leave the back gate open. But he hadn't counted on the canine. Valor was already there. They had brought him in the cruiser, just in case. The German Shepherd launched from the side gate with a single deep bark and took the man down like a missile wrapped in fur and teeth. By the time Terry arrived, the man was on his stomach, arms pinned, Valor growling softly beside his head. The man's face was pale. His lip bled from the landing, but what Terry noticed most was the tattoo on his wrist, an old name. Rachel. His name was Kyle Briggs, Rachel's ex. Had done 2 years for assault and 1 for weapons possession. No job, no home on record. But he had been living in the house, sleeping in the basement. Lily had never mentioned him, because he had told her not to. When they brought Rachel in for questioning, she cracked within the hour. "He told me if I said anything he'd hurt her, and I believed him. I was scared." "You should have been more scared of what your silence did to her," Terry replied. Back at the department, Lily sat with Denise, coloring again. This time it was a picture of Valor. She had drawn him with a big smile, tongue out, tail wagging. Beside him was a small stick figure with a ponytail and a blue dress. Underneath she wrote in large, uneven letters, "Me plus Valor. Safe." Dr. Levitt leaned over Terry's shoulder to see it. "She's beginning to trust," she said. "That's where healing starts." Terry nodded. "She didn't need a voice," he said quietly. "She needed a dog with one." By the end of the week, Kyle Briggs was behind bars. Rachel Parrish was facing charges of child endangerment and obstruction. Lily was placed in temporary care while longer-term arrangements were considered. And Valor? He was scheduled to receive a commendation from the department, not for a drug bust, not for tracking a suspect, but for listening to a little girl who no one else heard. In the parking lot after the ceremony, Lily ran up to Officer Terry, holding Clover in one hand and a bright red leash in the other. "Can Valor come to my birthday?" Terry laughed. "I think we can make that happen." As Valor trotted over, Lily leaned in close and whispered something only he could hear. The dog licked her cheek, sat beside her, and looked up with eyes full of knowing. Whatever she said, he already understood. Lily had only been at her new foster home for 6 days when the nightmares started. They came quietly, the way bad memories do. No screaming, no thrashing, just silent tears, her small frame curling tighter under the covers. Clover clutched so tightly it left lines on her arms. Rachel, her new foster mother, would find her like that most mornings. The pillow damp, the smile gone. But Lily didn't talk about the dreams. She just asked for more paper. So Rachel gave it to her. Sketch pads, crayons, markers, even watercolor brushes. It was the only thing that seemed to settle her. And Lily drew like she had been, waiting her whole life to. She didn't talk to adults much yet, but she started talking to Valor. Every Thursday, Officer Terry brought him by for short visits, part of her emotional support therapy through the department's Trauma K-9 outreach. It wasn't official policy, but no one was about to tell Valor. He couldn't do what he did best. He'd sit by her feet while she colored, watch her hands move, rest his head near the pages like he understood exactly what she was trying to say. One afternoon, while Rachel made grilled cheese in the kitchen, Lily sat at the dining room table working on her newest picture. Valor lay on the rug beside her. She drew a tree, a big one with thick roots, and underneath it she carefully scribbled a box, a wooden one, and inside the box, something round, a necklace. She leaned closer and started to write something next to it, then paused. Instead, she handed the picture to Valor, laying it gently across his paws. "Can he show you?" she asked when Officer Terry walked in later. Terry knelt beside the dog. "Show me what?" Lily pointed to the paper. "It's in the dirt, by the big root." He blinked, trying to make sense of the drawing. "Is that a necklace?" he asked. Lily nodded slowly. "My real daddy gave it to me," she whispered. "But," she buried it, "after he left." Terry looked up at Rachel, who stood quietly behind the counter, hands frozen around the skillet handle. "I think it's still there," Lily said. "Under the old tree, in the house before the last one." That stopped him. "How many houses did you live in?" Terry asked gently. Lily shrugged. 3, maybe 4. Rachel spoke up. "There are no records of the house before the last. Not in her case file." "She called it the greenhouse with the porch swing," Lily added, her voice small. "The swing was broken." Terry exchanged a glance with Rachel. It was vague, but enough to go on. 3 days later, Terry and Valor stood in front of a boarded-up house with cracked paint and a dead lawn, in a part of town most people didn't drive through unless they had to. There were no house numbers, no swing anymore, just rusted chains hanging from the porch beam. But Valor perked up the moment they stepped out of the car. He sniffed the wind. Tail stiff. Focus sharp. "You smell something, boy?" Terry asked. Valor pulled toward the left side of the yard, heading for an old oak tree that looked like it had been there 100 years. Its roots bulged out from the earth like knuckles, and sure enough, just like in the drawing, one thick root split, the dirt near the base leaving a small sunken patch of earth beneath it. Valor began to dig. Terry dropped to one knee beside him and used a small trowel to assist. The soil was dry, cracked, but just a few inches down the trowel hit something solid. Wood. He cleared away the dirt until a small, weathered box emerged. It wasn't locked. Inside was a tarnished silver chain, knotted with age, and a small plastic pennant in the shape of a heart. When Terry opened it, he found a photo inside, blurry, faded, but unmistakable. A man, holding a baby. Taped to the inside lid was a folded piece of paper. A birth certificate. Lily Mae Parrish. Father, Michael J. Parrish. Mother, Rachel Briggs. Wait. Briggs? That was Kyle's last name, the man who had hidden in the basement, the man who claimed to be an ex. He wasn't just Rachel's boyfriend, he was her brother. Back at the precinct, Terry stared at the file. Briggs, Rachel's maiden name, It had been wiped from all her recent records after she took back her ex-husband's last name. The connection to Kyle had been deliberately hidden. In foster parent interviews, she claimed no relatives in the system, no ties. But Kyle had lived, with her in more than one location. He wasn't an intruder. He had always been there. Terry brought the necklace and birth certificate to Lily during their next visit. She touched the pendant softly, fingers tracing the edges of the photo. "That's my daddy," she whispered. He had music in his voice. Terry swallowed hard. "Do you remember what happened to him?" She shook her head. "He used to sing, then one night I woke up and he was gone. Mommy said he left us, but she burned the tapes." "Tapes?" "My daddy recorded songs, on those little black boxes." "Cassettes?" Lily nodded. "She threw them in the fireplace. I tried to hide one. But she found it." Terry filed a formal request to reopen the missing persons case for Michael Parrish. The man had vanished 6 years prior. No reported movement, no bank activity, no known travel, but something felt wrong, too neat, too forgotten. He returned to the old house, this time with a search warrant, and valor. Inside, the floorboards creaked under their boots. The smell of mildew and rotting wood filled the air. Downstairs, the basement door stuck from water damage. When they finally forced it open, a gust of cold, damp air hit their faces. Valor growled once, then darted down the stairs. He moved fast to the far corner, where a section of the concrete floor looked slightly different, smoother, newer. Terry called for ground-penetrating radar and forensic backup. What they uncovered beneath the slab confirmed what no one wanted to believe. Human remains, wrapped in tarp, next to a broken guitar case and a cassette tape labeled Lily's Song. Later that week, Lily sat cross-legged on the floor of Rachel's living room, Valor curled beside her. She held the necklace in one hand and a cassette player in the other. Terry had found a way to restore the audio. When she hit play, the room, filled with soft guitar and a gentle, imperfect male voice, singing a lullaby written just for her. Lily didn't cry. She smiled. For the first time in weeks, she smiled without being asked. Rachel Parrish was arrested on charges of obstruction, evidence tampering, and conspiracy to conceal a death. The remains were positively identified as Michael J. Parrish. She denied knowing how he died, but the truth had already spoken. In a child's drawing, in a buried box, and in the unwavering bark of a dog who refused to ignore what the world had chosen to forget. It was a cloudy Thursday morning when Lily walked into the courthouse holding Valor's leash. Not a stuffed animal this time, not a crayon drawing, but a badge, a small, laminated ID clipped to her cardigan, witness, accompanied by certified K9 support animal. She didn't look like the girl who had once hidden behind a unicorn backpack. She still didn't talk much. But her chin was higher, her steps more steady. And Valor? He walked in perfect rhythm beside her like he always did, the steady hum of his presence shielding her from the weight of a world that had been too heavy, too soon. The courtroom was quiet when they entered. A few journalists in the back, court sketch artists, no cameras. Judge Klein had ruled that Lily's privacy would be protected at all costs. Rachel Parrish sat at the defense table, her face unreadable, hands clasped together tightly. No makeup. No distractions, just silence. But Lily knew silence better than anyone, and this time she was going to use it differently. On the stand, she sat with her legs barely reaching the edge of the seat. Valor laid at her feet, alert but calm, wearing his service vest. Officer Terry stood nearby, not too close, but close, enough that she could see his nod of encouragement when the court clerk asked for her name. She didn't speak at first. She reached into her small jacket pocket and pulled out a worn cassette tape, the same one that had been buried with her father. The judge looked confused for a moment. Terry stepped forward. "Your Honor, this tape is not evidence. It's a comfort." The judge nodded, gently. Permission granted. Lily set the cassette on the bench beside her, next to Clover, the stuffed bunny, restored and stitched up by her foster mom. Then she looked up and began. I used to think if I stayed quiet, the bad things would go away. Her voice was clear, small, but steady. I thought if I smiled, I'd get to keep Clover, or my mom would stop yelling, or he would leave me alone. The courtroom was silent. Even the court reporter's fingers slowed. But the dog knew. She continued, her hand resting on Valor's fur. He didn't listen to what I said. He listened to what I couldn't. Terry had watched dozens of testimonies in his career. Some explosive, some heartbreaking, but none had ever been like this. A second grader, testifying not to win, but to tell the truth. She talked about the day her backpack was ripped open, how she'd written the note weeks before but had been too afraid to hand it to anyone, how she had put it in the hidden pocket and whispered to Clover, hoping someone, anyone, would find it. She talked about the box under the tree, the necklace, the voice she hadn't heard since she was 3, the lullaby, and then she looked at Rachel, her mother. I wanted to believe you were scared too, she said softly. But you weren't. You were quiet because you chose to be. Rachel's eyes finally broke. One tear, nothing more. But it was too late. After the testimony, Lily sat in the hallway sipping apple juice. Valor curled at her side. Terry brought her a small donut with pink frosting and rainbow sprinkles. That, he said gently, was braver than anything I've ever done. Lily didn't answer. She just broke the donut in half and held the bigger half out to Valor. He sniffed it, gently took it from her hand, and laid his head in her lap. 2 weeks later, Rachel was sentenced to 6 years in prison for obstruction, accessory to concealment of a felony, and failure to protect a child. Kyle Briggs would likely face a separate trial for manslaughter, once prosecutors secured enough forensic links to Michael Parrish's remains. But for Lily, it wasn't about punishment anymore. It was about peace and healing, and maybe, just maybe, turning her pain into something more. Rachel, her foster mom, signed Lily up for an art program at the local library. It wasn't fancy, just crayons, tempera paint, and a volunteer teacher named Miss Gina who played jazz while they worked. Lily didn't talk much there either, but she drew. Vivid landscapes, safe houses, dogs with capes. And one day, after class, she handed Terry a drawing. It was of Valor, wearing a superhero mask. Above his head were the words, "When I couldn't scream, he barked." That piece of art ended up framed on the wall at the local precinct, right next to the framed letter from the mayor thanking Valor and Terry for their service. But something else began to happen that no one expected. Other kids started drawing too, from the foster system, from shelters, from the quiet corners of school counselors' offices. They drew what they couldn't say. One little boy drew a shadowy figure in the corner of a room. Another girl drew a doll with one eye missing, and a chain around its wrist. The counselors started calling it the Lily effect. They said Valor had opened a door, but Lily had stepped through it and left it open for others. One afternoon, months later, Terry and Valor were invited to a group art therapy session held in the gymnasium of a residential care center. Lily was there, seated cross-legged near the front with a sketch pad in her lap and a new kid beside her, a boy named Marcus, just turned 9, who hadn't spoken in nearly a year. Terry walked over to greet them, Valor at his side. Lily looked up and smiled. "He's been drawing people with their eyes crossed out," she said quietly. "But he said he wants to draw Valor next." Terry crouched down to their level. "Valor's ready," he said. "He listens even when people whisper with crayons." Marcus looked up, eyes flickering between the officer and the dog. Then, for the first time in months, he nodded. Later that night, Rachel emailed Terry a photo. It was Marcus's drawing. Valor, standing guard in front of a door made of bricks with a small child behind him and words written in bold red crayon, "He doesn't let bad things in." Terry closed his laptop and looked down at Valor sleeping by the fireplace. "You're changing more lives than you know," he whispered. Valor didn't move, but his tail thumped twice against the floor, just enough to say, "I know." Officer Terry was standing by the coffee machine at the precinct when the call came. His phone buzzed on his belt, not his personal line, but the secure department alert reserved for critical child welfare cases. The kind that couldn't wait. He answered immediately. "Westbrook Charter School," the voice on the line said. "There's been an incident involving a student, and we'd like Valor on scene." Terry's jaw clenched. "What happened?" "Student collapsed during a lockdown drill. Another child said they saw her writing something on her shoe before she fainted. And now? She's safe but won't speak. Terrified. Parents unreachable. Nurse found something in her sock." "What was it?" "Note on 2 words it says, 'Help us.'" Terry didn't waste a second. Within minutes he and Valor were en route. Westbrook Charter sat at the edge of town, surrounded by quiet neighborhoods and wide streets. It was one of those schools built in the early 2000s. Clean lines, big windows, but tight hallways and poorly labeled storage rooms. On the surface, it was everything you'd expect from a safe suburban school, which is why what they found inside was so unsettling. Principal Darla Jenkins met them at the entrance. She looked flustered, eyes darting toward the hallway. "She's in the nurse's office. Her name is Emily Cho, 2nd grade. Bright, sweet girl. This isn't like her." Terry knelt down next to Valor, who was already alert, sniffing the air. "Let's see what she wants to tell us," he said. Emily sat, curled on the nurse's cot, her back to the wall, knees hugged tight. She didn't look up when Terry entered, but her eyes tracked Valor the moment he stepped in. The nurse handed Terry the small note. Written in pencil, barely legible, on a torn piece of notebook paper. "Help us." Terry crouched beside the girl. "Hi, Emily, this is Valor. He's very good at secrets. You don't have to talk to me if you don't want to. But if there's something you want him to know, you can tell him." Valor slowly approached the bed, lying down with his head near her feet. Emily's lips parted, but no sound came out. Her hand slowly reached down and touched the dog's fur. Then she whispered something, barely audible. Terry leaned in. "What was that, sweetheart?" she whispered again, slightly louder. "They're not in the classrooms." Terry felt a chill run through him. "Who's not in the classrooms?" Her eyes flicked toward the hallway. "Some of the kids." With permission from the principal, Terry began a quiet walkthrough of the school. Valor sniffed every hallway, every open classroom, his ears twitching, body alert. Nothing, until they reached the east wing. Valor froze at a janitor's closet, but this wasn't just any supply space. The door looked too wide for normal storage, no window, no label. Terry tried the knob. Locked. He knocked once. Silence. Then he looked at the floor. The linoleum had scuff marks, scratches that curved inward, like something or someone had been dragged across the threshold. He turned to the principal. "Do you have keys to this?" Her face paled. "That room was sealed after the expansion. We don't use it anymore." "But you have a key?" She hesitated. "I'll get it." When she returned, Terry opened the door slowly. It creaked on the hinges, revealing a dark, windowless space. Valor barked. Once. Loud. Sharp. Inside, under the pale glow of a single dangling light bulb, were 6 old desks, a stack of outdated textbooks, and 2 sleeping bags, food wrappers, a lantern, and a pile of children's clothing in the corner. Terry's heart dropped. He stepped inside slowly, Valor at his side, nose twitching. It smelled like fear, sweat, and something else, like damp, laundry and mold. Behind a folding partition near the back wall, they found a small spiral-bound notebook. Inside were drawings, crude but clear. One showed a girl with duct tape over her mouth. Another showed two children hiding under a table. The final page said, "When the teacher locks the door, wait until she's gone. Then stay quiet." Terry didn't leave the room until every inch had been photographed and processed. Valor stayed close the entire time, laying down near the far wall and refusing to budge. Later, forensic technicians would confirm what Terry already suspected: that wall wasn't original. Behind it was a crawl space with signs of recent use. Blankets, juice boxes, a phone charger. Whoever had used this room had been there recently, and often. The next day, Child Services cross-checked attendance and security footage. 2 students, siblings, had missed weeks of classes but were never reported truant, because their names had been removed from roll sheets by someone with admin access. The principal, Darla Jenkins, was placed on immediate leave. Investigators found evidence of falsified records, unreported deliveries, and security logs with deliberate gaps. It appeared that someone had been hiding children during the day, possibly trafficked, possibly held under coercion, and moving them at night. No signs of them now. But someone had gotten out, Emily, and she had left a message that reached the only one who truly listened. Later that week, Emily met Lily for the first time. It was at a library event where Valor was being recognized again, this time by a statewide child advocacy group. The 2 girls didn't say much, but they sat beside each other, and they drew. Lily sketched Valor, standing in front of a dark door. Emily drew a girl reaching through a hole in the wall. Terry watched them from across the room and felt a knot in his throat. They weren't just survivors. They were the ones still listening. To each other. To every quiet cry tucked into a shoe or scrawled in a corner of a math notebook. And Valor? He had never once stopped listening. It had been nearly 4 months since Valor ripped open Lily's backpack on the blacktop at Westbrook Elementary. 4 months since a note fell out, since a teacher collapsed, and since a truth no one wanted to see was forced into daylight by a dog who never missed a signal. Lily now lived with Rachel Bennett, her foster mom, in a small yellow house with a white fence and a porch swing that didn't creak. She slept through most nights. She laughed sometimes. She still didn't talk much to adults, but she'd begun asking questions. And when she did, they mattered. On Sunday mornings, she helped Rachel make waffles shaped like hearts. On Thursdays, she drew with Emily at the community center. And every other Tuesday, Officer Terry and Valor came by for dinner. Not because they had to, because they wanted to. One such evening, Lily handed Terry a notebook. "I don't want to draw about the bad stuff anymore," she said. "But I think this one matters." Terry opened the cover. Inside were drawings of a classroom, except something was off. The floor had 2 levels. A ladder led downward, and under the floorboards Lily had drawn boxes. Inside them were stick figures curled up in corners. He looked at her carefully. "Where did this come from?" Lily hesitated. "It's not my memory. It's what Emily drew once." She said she didn't remember it all, just that it felt like a dream. But I think it was real. Rachel leaned over, concern etched across her face. Emily's school, the one where Valor uncovered the hidden room, was still under investigation. No new children had been found, and the staff responsible had clammed up behind attorneys in silence. But Lily's drawing offered something new, a detail no one had considered. "Do you think there's more than one level?" Rachel asked. Lily nodded. She called it the quiet under the quiet. The next morning, Terry brought Valor back to the school. They had already searched the entire building once, but this time, he asked for access to the subfloor, the narrow crawl space used mostly for HVAC maintenance and old wiring. No one had checked it before. It took nearly 30 minutes to navigate the tight entryway beneath the east wing. Valor crawled ahead of him, tail low, nose twitching hard. And then he stopped. Scratched the wall. Barked, once. Deep and sharp. Terry moved fast, pushing aside old insulation. Behind it, he found a thin plywood panel nailed into place. He pried it, loose with a crowbar. The opening revealed a chamber no one knew existed. It was narrow, no more than 5 feet wide, but ran the full length of the hallway above. Inside, he found 3 old crates, a pile of torn sleeping bags, and a child's backpack. He opened it slowly. Inside was a name tag. Marcus L. Graham, age 7. Terry froze. Marcus had gone missing 11 months earlier from a different county. The case was cold. Posters had faded. The parents had moved. Everyone assumed the worst. But here was his bag, and tucked inside the front pocket, a drawing. A dog. With red crayon words, "He barks even when I can't." The investigation exploded overnight. DNA. From the crawlspace confirmed that multiple children had passed through it. Names emerged. Some had been missing for weeks. Others had never been reported, likely undocumented or trafficked from outside the area. But now, there was evidence. Proof that couldn't be ignored. Thanks to a dog, and a little girl who paid attention to what someone else once whispered. 1 month later, Lily stood on stage at a community event held in Valor's honor. He had just received the National Service Canine Medal of Valor, and hundreds of people had come to thank the team that had saved so many lives without ever drawing a weapon. Lily wore a blue dress and a red pin shaped like a paw print. She stepped up to the microphone with a piece of paper in her hand. "I used to think silence meant safety," she began. "That if I didn't speak, no one could hurt me more. But I was wrong." She looked down at Valor, who sat patiently at her feet. "This dog barked when I couldn't. He didn't wait for words. He listened to my quiet. And because he did, I wasn't invisible anymore." She unfolded the paper and read one last line. "If you want to help someone, don't wait for them to scream. Pay attention to the silence." That line was shared across the internet. News stations, school boards, child advocacy networks. In the weeks that followed, new programs were launched across the country to train therapy dogs to work in schools and foster centers. Teachers were retrained to notice behavioral silences, not just outbursts. And children were encouraged to express themselves in whatever way they could, drawing, humming, or simply sitting close to someone who felt safe. Valor retired 6 months. Later with full honors. He now lived with Officer Terry, who built him a custom bed and made him scrambled eggs every Sunday. As for Lily, she wrote a book, not a long one, just a picture book called The Dog Who Heard Me. It became a quiet bestseller, not because it was flashy, but because it told the truth. Life doesn't always scream. Sometimes it just goes quiet. The question is, when someone around you grows silent, will you be the one who hears them?